Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Finji show. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. As always, let us know if that is not the case. We have quite the show today to hang out during what is our lunch break once again. I can be heard and seen. Thank you. Always a good sign to start a stream, being heard and seen. Thank you so much. As always, I am your host, Aster, and I'm really, really excited to be here today with none other than Finji co-founder and director Adam, and the very, very wonderful and very, very fun Daniel. And we are going to be talking about absolutely incredible tiny games, how they interact with some of the big and many year-long games that they have made on Pico 8 and beyond. And it's going to be a really wonderful conversation. So we're not going to delay. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I love hearing how people introduce themselves. So Daniel, would you want to kick us off? Let us know who you are. What are some of the large and small games that you've made? And what is your favorite animal? And is it a corgi?
Okay. So I'm going to start by saying that it's so fun to see Americans avoid having to say my last name out loud because nobody knows how to do it. So they're like, what I do about this? I'm
You
going
know
to
what?
mess it
I
up.
actually
So
practiced it and then just didn't say it. I don't know why.
you see, you didn't
So
say it. You chickened out. You chickened out instead of chicken out. That's fine. That's fine. It happens. It happens to me. It happens to me all the time. No problem.
thank you
No
for
problem.
calling me out on it, though. That's great. It's a great way to start.
Okay. So I'm Daniel. Like my last name, Americans say it Benmergui, which is fine. Uh, I pronounce it Benmergui, which is just a slight variation of that. One thing that I regret about my development life is that should have chosen a nickname since the beginning that is short and easy to remember and not have to deal with any of this throughout all my development life, which I'm sure brought me many missed opportunities because people just skip the guy with the weird name, right? So I am an independent developer from Argentina. I have a micro nano studio of people. We make small games. Our specialty is making games, the kind of games that nobody else is trying to make so far. It has been our aesthetic has been to make try new gameplay. Um, Personally, I've been an independent developer since 2008 when I started, and one of my earliest games were I Wish I Were the Moon and Today I Died, which were art games. One of my first projects that ended up being relevant within the small group of people that makes the international developers that made games. It was part of the art game movement when we were trying to make games that challenge the notion that video games should all be entertainment, and it ended up being part of the university programs. Like sometimes I meet people that are like very young and they tell me that they played I Wish I Were the Moon because it was part of what they got taught at game design or something, which is pretty cool. So that was a very long time ago though. Then I made Storyteller, which is my most well-known game, maybe, which is took me 15 years to make, and fortunately, it did very well. It's on Steam. Also, Netflix. I got a license from Netflix, so the game can be played there, and it was extremely successful on Netflix. Um, and it's a game about it's a puzzle game where you build small stories, where you give it a story title like "The Murder of Jealousy," and then you need to make a story that is about the murder of jealousy. That's storytelling. And more recently, I made a game called Dragon Sweeper, which is like the old Minesweeper, but with monsters and leveling, and it's a roguelike, which tries something that was interesting to me at the time, which is sort of reflects how we think about game design, which is that there's information, there's more information on what you're seeing than it's obvious. And Dragon Sweeper is a bit about that, right? So it's not just the mines are not just mines, but they're telling you something about where they are and what's going on, and it helps you think about the game. And you need to discover what the rules are. I really like that kind of game design where you need to figure out how things work. That's that's my brief presentation.
Okay, but what about the corgi?
Oh yeah, yeah, I forgot about that. So I also made a game called Fidel Dungeon Rescue, in which you are a corgi and you need to rescue your owner by going into dungeons and solving puzzles. Yes.
Thank you, Daniel. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, hi, I'm Adam Saltsman, and like I mentioned earlier, I co-founded Finji, and I'm sort of our game director, design director kind of person. And yeah, I started making Flash games, I think technically in 2007 maybe, but right around the same time as Daniel, and also was in 2008 also one of the first games that I had made that anybody paid attention to was also kind of part of the same art games movement. It was called Fathom, and it was sort of a rug pull experience where it looked and sounded just like a really badass like Mega Man cave story game where you were like running through the tunnel and you were shooting robots and those cool explosions, and then something goes wrong in the boss fight and your little robot character dies, and the game hard pivots to some kind of really weird bridge on Owl Creek, Jacob's Ladder kind of game about the pre-death hallucinations of a robot who's trying to figure out what happened to them as their sort of microchips turn off or whatever. And I don't know if I can't remember the response to your games, Daniel, but the response to this art game was very polarizing. And a lot of people were like, oh, this is so cool. This isn't totally not what I expected. And then the rest of the responses were, this is so uncool. It's not what I expected. Which I think was like a good formative commercial, like a game design experience for me. But I made some more small Flash games after that, including Cannonball, which is sort of helped kick off the Infinite Runner genre as it stands. And then I think similar to Daniel, started making bigger and bigger games. I made a strategy game called Overland that took a good solid 6 to 7 years, depending on how you count it. And I'm currently working on Usual June, which is an absolutely massive undertaking. And then starting last fall, around October, I started making small games again. This is right after I played UFO 50, which is a collection of 50 small games by 5 or 6 just absolutely brilliant designers, mostly from the Bay Area. And I just felt like super inspired by the way they were having fun with game design and the number of different ideas that they were exploring and the way that the games were being really thoughtful about what they tell the player versus what they don't tell the player. I think, Daniel, you said something about liking to make games where you don't realize all the things that you can see and know at first. And like part of learning to play the game is kind of like parting. I interpreted that to mean like one of the ways that a game can be fun to learn to play is learning to see it differently. Right. And I definitely felt that way when I was playing Dragon Sweeper. I was like, it's such a good example, I think, of a game where like the first 2 times I played it, I was just like, what is even happening in this game? I don't understand where anything is. I don't know what this is. I don't know what's happening. And then the 3rd time I played it, all these light bulbs started turning on, right? And suddenly, but nothing in the game had changed. I didn't unlock level 3 dungeon vision, right? Like that happened in my head. And that's an experience that I had on a lot of the games in the UFO 50 collection also. And so that's definitely been on my mind sitting down making new games. I've made 12 or 13 little games on the fantasy console platform Pico 8 since October, and I've been having a super good time doing it. And like I think of it as I've actually Esther wrote a bunch of really good questions, but I have a Dragon Sleeper question also, which is
Okay.
part of why I was making a big part of why I started making these little games again is I felt like I was not learning enough fast enough in terms of game design and what is modern game design on my bigger project. I felt like these big projects, not only do you have all the concerns about commercial game design and what you can and can't do and what is and isn't risky, and trying to coordinate a big team of people to all work together in a happy and confident way. But I feel like there's a lot of aspects of game design that to me feel like, oh, I need to, like, this has to somehow be faster, and usually that means smaller. So I feel like part of my attitude about this was like, I want to kind of like go to the next level as a game designer or whatever. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
Just like the urge to be better somehow. But I felt like this a lot, and I think this was definitely part of why I used to make small flash games, is like I can only read so many things or watch so many videos. At some point I just have to sit down and do it, and like crank something out in a couple of weeks and metabolize, think about that, and do it again, and think about that and do it again. But I was wondering how much of coming off of this massive undertaking for Storyteller and Storyteller's huge success, and turning around and immediately making a pixel art web game, how much of that was like, what were your motivations? And yeah, what were you thinking when you were like, that's the right next thing to do? Because I think I think we often see the other thing, right? Which is like, wow, well, I just wrapped up that 15-year project. It went really well. Time to start the next, 10-year long mega project. But
yeah, totally. I see what you mean. So I guess my motivation to make Dragon Sweeper is very similar to yours, in this sense that you and I, when we started, we sort of did that, right? Just small games. We were trying also to figure out how to do game design, because we were just beginning, right? So we have these ideas, we try them out. We're still not very good at, triaging our own ideas. We just move forward. We were trying to figure something out, right?
yeah,
And first of all, I think there was a joy in doing that. Which, by the way, we were super lucky to be there. Like, we were at the right place at the right time, because we got that window where we could make games that are small, that are doable, that can be finished, and there's a place for them to go, right? You have like Newgrounds or Congregate or whatever, where you could just put your game out there and get like thousands of people to try it out just to see what it is, which was unthinkable 10 years before that. So we got that chance of doing something small that helped us learn something, and then put it out there. And sometimes some of them are well received, and you're like, oh wow, what I do matters, right? Everything I did matters, and it has an effect. And I think there was a joy in that, both in learning to make games and at the same time having a place to show them, right?
yeah.
And when you start making a commercial game, it's not like that at all. It doesn't feel like that. Maybe it feels like that at the beginning of the project, when you're trying out the ideas, and you have something that works, and you show it to friends, you show it to publishers, and they seem excited, or they like what you're doing, and it feels great. But then you go into this giant slog of making an actual game, right? And in your case, and in mine, that slog was very, very long. Which also made us disconnect a bit from why we were there in the first place, right? So I guess what happened to me with Dragon Sweeper, which happened like probably a year. It was pretty much a year after we shipped the last update for Storyteller, right?
Mhm.
So in between that year, we took a break. First, we took a break because we just shipped the game. It was a giant marathon to launch it and all that. But also my partner who did part of the design and all the art for the game died at the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what, I cannot do anything for a while, so I stopped doing stuff. And then at the end of last year, I decided to start working on Storyteller again to do an update. Uh, I assembled, a new small team just to start doing something that feels like it's worth doing. I think it's worth doing one final push on Storyteller. But also, it happened that part of me wanted to go back to the essentials, right? I need part of what happened after finishing Storyteller, shipping it, and what happened with Jeremy as my partner. I was like thinking that I need to remember why I am doing this in the first place, right? Why am
Mm.
I even making games? Why am I doing it,
Mm.
right? And as I say, I could embark on a new commercial project, big commercial projects and stuff. I could do that right now. I have the credit to do that. I just, but then I don't know. It doesn't exactly feel like something that would make me happy right now,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So I guess part of me was like, I think I should go back to the basics, as we
Yeah.
were, Adam, in 2007, 2008, in which we're like, okay, let's go out there. We're pioneers trying to figure out what to do in the world. So let's do that again, right? So it was me going back to that. It was just
Yeah.
uh, the
Yeah.
fact
And
that
I
it
think
was a good game. Yeah, sorry. I don't want to.
oh no,
I
no.
talked.
I was
Go
just
ahead. Go
thinking
ahead.
like this is making me think so many things with that specifically. I feel like it's uh I feel like when we went to basics in 2007, 2008, it was out of a recognition that we had no other option, right? If we didn't go to basics back then, we weren't going to get to make anything. Nothing would exist. All we can handle is basics. We're like, like babies, like just give us the blocks and we'll have fun and it's fine. But yeah, it feels a little different. It feels like the same, ultimately like a similar feeling, similar desire. Let's go back to basics. Let's get as small as we can. Let's get, add as few moving parts and just see what they can do, kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's different. It definitely feels different or weird for me to have that be like that's a choice we have to, that's like a deliberate choice we make now. Like, 20 years ago, that I feel like I wasn't even making a choice. It was just
Right.
like, oh, we have the baby blocks. That's all it's
Right.
available. We have
Right.
a few pixels, one idea. That's all we can come up with. But now, yeah, I just feel like I have like mountains of ideas. I can use 5 different game engines, can do all this stuff. But ultimately, like, that doesn't. Uh, there's something intentional about being a little bit basic that does seem connected to this, like, how do I make like the day to day doing game design be fun again? And yeah.
I mean, I think there's definitely a search for joy in making games. I at least myself, I really needed that. I needed to get that feeling that what I'm doing has potential and it matters and it's something
Mhm.
new, and I can still surprise people by making something that nobody expected me to make. Uh,
Mhm.
um, but also, I mean, now I'm going. Maybe this is going to sound a bit like mystical or whatever, but I also think that I think a shift started in how things work right now, and I
Mm.
and I like to think that this feeling that I have, that's I feel like maybe going back to make games for the web makes sense. I mean, something is going on for the future. Is what I'm thinking about here. What I'm thinking is, when Steam showed up, we were all like, let's go make games on Steam, right? you just make it's a slightly larger game, and you can make millions of dollars doing that. Like we all wanted to do that, right? So especially because we were there at the beginning, so we could we had access to all the millions of dollars that Steam could produce for us with our games, right?
Yeah.
But I think what ended up happening to me is, and this is something I've been thinking the past year, is that Steam is still a niche, and it's still small. It's, of course, it's a very big niche. So it's big enough to make us a lot of money, but it's still a niche. And the people there, the people playing games there, are a very specific kind of person, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably not your friends outside game development, right? So I started to think that maybe I want to break out of that. Of course, making games for Steam makes sense. We are thinking about we're starting to do some mock-ups and stuff, and we're probably going to try doing Dragon Sweeper, like a commercial version of Dragon Sweeper. We are probably going to do that. I mean, it's still going to be small, but it's going to. I'm not going to go all the ivory tower thing and go away and spend 4 years on Dragon Sweeper. I'm not going to do that. So I'm aiming just for. I'm probably going to grab what is there, make it big enough so there's a daily challenge, and leave it at that, right? So that's my plan. But I am also considering maybe I should also. I mean, for Steam, that's fine. It's like sounds like an obvious choice. Let's try on Steam. It will probably people like it on itch. They're probably going to like it on Steam too, right?
Yeah.
But I am also thinking about doing a version for the web. I'm still not sure how we're going to turn that into money, but I want to break out of Steam. Right. So this thing about going back to stuff that works on the web, I'm not talking about technical, but I'm talking about all the reach that you have. That is a very, has its own particularities, right? Like how do people find my games on the web? I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but I'm definitely going to find people that are not on Steam, right? So this thing about going back to the basics and doing small stuff that can share around. Maybe it's not just us going back to or playful times or playful game design times, but there's maybe some readings and a bit of a instinct that something is going on in the future about this. Or I like to think about that, but it's just a mystical idea that I'm having.
I mean, is it really that mystical? Didn't you just hit 1 million players for Dragon Sweeper earlier this month? Congratulations on that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's, I mean, not so mystical.
I mean, I was saying, like, imagine if I made Dragon Sweeper if it was a downloadable game, do you think I would have reached 1 million? And the answer is probably not. Most likely I wouldn't have.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very good. So I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say it was impossible, but it's an extra obstacle, right? Like it's another thing in the way. And especially for a game that has, like this is a design thing that's on my mind a lot with these little games is, like you were saying, like, so if you have to download Dragon Sweeper or you had to pay $1 for it or something, right? But it doesn't have a pre-established audience, it doesn't have a reputation yet, and somebody turns it on and they play a whole round of it and it doesn't make any sense to them yet, and they do a really bad job and they die having achieved nothing, like that's maybe a bad experience for somebody versus like what I think of as like part of the free game web game audience thing, I think to some degree, is somebody goes, hey, did you see this? I think it's kind of interesting, but I don't really know how to win yet. And then your friend plays it some and they go, oh yeah, I got completely wiped out after 3 clicks. What's going on? And then they go, oh, you when it says, look at the Monsterpedia, you really gotta look at that thing. There's like, and then you can have somebody start vouching. Now somebody's going like, oh yeah, no, just play it like 2 more times. It's going to all unfold and you're going to be having a super good time. And I'm definitely thinking about that a lot with, all these other little web games that I've been playing with, because like that's also a feeling. I love that feeling in a game. I love when the game trusts me. I've been thinking of these games as being like old old thrillers. Like I think of these, to me these games have like something of a Hitchcock movie, where
Right.
like a Hitchcock movie always starts with him photographing somebody's feet and only their feet. It's usually somebody's wearing business shoes and slacks and they're walking through a room of some sort, but he won't show you their face, and he won't even show you what kind of room they're in. Usually you have to figure out from the sound, oh, this is a train station or something.
Right.
This is the opening 20 seconds of the movie or something, right?
Right.
And that's a really different kind of movie from, and I'm going to be just really broad and unnecessarily critical here, but a Marvel movie that starts out with an explanation of who all the characters are,
Right.
or whatever, right? That's a different kind of entertainment, but like there's such a specific joy in sitting down. You turn on the Hitchcock movie and you're like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, he's getting on the
Right.
train. Why is he getting on the train? What if something
Right.
bad happens on the train? Like what a wonderful pile of thoughts. But I think a lot of commercial games, a lot of these large scale games, a lot of your expectation, if you pay for a game, you want it to be worth your time or whatever. You don't want it to be too hostile to you, maybe. But I like sometimes it feels like those things are in conflict. Like the thing that I want a game that has a little bit of a slow cook on purpose,
Right.
that's like trying to create a little space where I stumble into the room and I trip over the thing because I couldn't find the light switch, but now I found the light switch and I can see a little more, and now I can go a little farther, and now I know a little more, and now I can do this. But there's a lot of I think the conventional wisdom about doing a big game or an expensive game or a commercial game is that those things are too risky. Like you can't really do that. And there's lots of counterexamples. Like even Vampire Survivors has some amount of like, this is just baffling. What's happening to me? What kind of game is this? And you figure it out as you go. But it does feel like that feels really scary to me when I'm doing a bigger project. But when I'm doing one of these little games, I feel like, oh, I don't just have permission to do this, but I have like, this is part of the fun in a way. But I guess, I don't know, like, is that, it's weird because sometimes you think of a web audience or a free audience as they cruise in, they drive by, they click on your game. If it's not fun in the first 5 seconds, they leave, right? Like I think that audience gets characterized that way a lot, but there is this other side of it. There's another side where they cruise in, and after 5 seconds, they're baffled but intrigued. Right. And then they stick around and they keep messing with it. And, but like, I think that's an interactive experience in a way. Like if they have to pay for the game, they have to download it first. Maybe they're not getting, like, how do they get that first thing where they are this certain kind of hooked by mystery? Because I think when we sit down to try to create that situation, we're creating that with game rules, with UI considerations, with controls. Like that's the game design. The game design is the mystery, and you normally have to like click the button to feel the mystery, and then you do the thing. So you can have that on the web, and it's harder to get that in this other place. I don't know. I feel like I'm juggling a lot of contradictory.
Yeah. It's something I've been thinking about. Like, there's one thing that at some point, since you and I, we both think about how to make money with our games, right? We think about that a lot. We've been thinking about that for many years. We have many friends. We saw our friends struggle with all the aspects of making commercial games. We saw games that our friends fail, our friends fail to finish the project, ship them and not make money, ship them and make a lot of money, get rich, lose it all. We've seen it all, right? So we're thinking a lot about what entails making money with games. And part of the answer to that is like, who are we making our games for, and what should we think about when we are designing about who the person we're making our games is for, right? So one thing that I've been thinking is that Steam, for example, has a very specific. Of course, there's different types of people on Steam, right? I'm going to generalize a bit, but just let me do that. there's an exercise that people on Steam do that is very tempting to do. I mean, players is, to make like a critical evaluation of what the value of the game was compared to the price, for example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that how much enjoyment did I draw out of the price of the game? And they're very specific about it. There is an equation, there is a curve, there is a curve, right? So that they get a feeling of what that curve is. So this game is $5. So I wouldn't expect 80 hours of gameplay, but maybe there's a curve there.
Yeah.
And contrary to what they may think, that curve is probably very similar among all those people. It's not this is my curve of dollar to enjoy the thing, but I think it's a thing you start picking up. Oh, people are complaining about the price of this game, and I played it, and yeah, it's kind of short, right? Yeah, it's kind of short. Maybe it's not. So they start picking up, and it starts becoming an exercise, like a wine sommelier, right? You start trying wines, and then you start enjoying the exercise of criticizing the wine, right? So it starts becoming a meta game itself when you're playing games on Steam, right? What do I think about this game? Is it good value or is it not good value, right? So something very specific happened to Storyteller when we shipped it on Steam. It was a bit on the short side, so we had to ship it at the time. We had to ship it, and we were planning on doing updates on it, but we ship it as it was. And there was a lot of criticism about how short the game was, which was expected. Bad in the sense that it sends the game to mixed, which on Steam is like a death sentence. So fortunately, we managed to get out, just barely get out of that. Like, you see, 70% positive was the threshold. We were at 71, right? So we were just above, a face, like barely above the water, and that kept being stable, and then it became viral on TikTok, which was most of what made the game successful. It became viral on TikTok. We didn't do anything. We just Annapurna, our publisher, they just wrote to me and they were like, "Daniel, did you do something?" And I was like, "I didn't do anything." So nobody knew what's going on, but our sales were like, "What?" And we figured out it was TikTok. And what happened? And this is the interesting part. A giant score of people came into the game, right? And the reviews started going up fast. Like, all the review scores started going like fast, steadily, and all the the written small reviews started being started being good, right? So people are happy with games. So, this is a cool puzzle game, and I saw this TikToker play it, and I played it, it's great, and all that, right? So they drove a bunch of people that were not the game sommelier type of guys, right? And that made so they were fine with the price of the game. Nobody complained about the price of the game. They were like, "I don't care if it costs $15. What do I care? I just had a great time. It's fine, right?"
Yeah.
So I don't care. So that's a different kind of audience, right? And on the web, one thing that I think is that there's like regular people can be very, very hardcore in terms of what they're willing to play. Like, hardcore in a way that is surprisingly hardcore. They don't care. They will jump into super brutal puzzle games and stuff, and they're going to be fine with it. Even though they never play, they cannot use a gamepad, right?
No.
But they will go into the puzzle game and destroy it, even though it's brutal. And they will like, I wish there were harder puzzles, right?
Yeah.
So there's a giant audience of people that are not afraid of being challenged by games. But since it's the web, it's very hard to know how do I get access to those people? How do I make those people aware that I made a game that they might like, right?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this exact thing a lot, that there's a specific kind of quote unquote casual audience that is maybe massive, and also maybe they're not wired at all the way that conventional wisdom would have you think that they're wired, and that they actually I'm at risk of being over skis here, I think most people actually do genuinely love challenging games that have weird new stuff in them. And it's entirely a question and a puzzle of like, one, how did they come across the game at all? And two, when they do come across it, what do you do as a designer to walk that little tightrope with them of like, hey, this game is gonna be crazy, but you're going to love it so much. And here I've taken care of this part of the thing. I've accounted for this. I have crafted this game in such a way that your attention is on the right things, and that I think contrary to a lot of other kind of game industry conventional wisdom, I think a lot of that work is cheap work. Like, I don't think you need a focus group to do it for the most part. Like, it's you have to be sensitive to and attentive as a
Right.
person,
But wait. You mean reducing friction when they jump into the game? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but in a specific way, like looking for like, not that level one is easy, right? But looking for what do I do in the design? What do I do in the programming of this thing such that when a stranger comes in, they're thinking about the thing that I hope they're thinking about,
I
right?
see.
Because like I think that requires like patience and insight and a variety of other things, but it mostly doesn't require like 10 people working 40 hours a week for 6 months or something, right?
Yeah.
And so like there's something, it really, I'm essentially like, I'm completely in your camp on this. I think that I think people's hunger for or appreciation for uh really to me shockingly hardcore gameplay, it's really surprisingly challenging puzzles and genuinely new kinds of puzzles, a puzzle they haven't seen before, with the big asterisk that you simply have to design it good. It has to be done in a way where you're thinking about what you want them to be thinking about, et cetera, and trying to accommodate that and make that work. Um, but that seems like that's the hard part. That's the tricky part. That's the thing that makes it work. It's not that you have to dumb it down for a mainstream audience almost ever. You just need to be
Mhm.
thinking about like, okay, they're not me. They're not like, we have a lot of things in common, but they're not me. They're not bringing, I'm the game designer. I know everything. So I have to keep practicing. I know nothing, but otherwise I'm just like my players. We're
Right.
the same kind of person. We like puzzles, we like problems, we like picking at something and seeing what happens, So, but I'm just going to make it so that the game is good at that part of it. And then I'm not going to dumb it down. I'm not going to make it too easy. I'm going to make this space where they
Yeah.
can come in and have fun, the same kind of fun that I like to have.
Right. Yeah, but you're assuming at that point that you already picked the right idea, right? Which is a challenge in itself, because part of the reason why it happened to me many times that when you start playing the tutorial, the first levels of game, you start realizing that they may have not picked the right idea, right? So regardless of how good the tutorial is, or how frictionless, or how quickly you understand what the game is about,
Yeah.
still maybe it was not the right idea, right?
Yeah.
Which is it's a very hard problem, right? I'm thinking about this because I've been talking about this subject this week with people.
Mhm.
It happens often that people come to me to show me games that they're
Yeah.
making, to see, to ask for feedback or opinions or anything.
Yeah.
And it happens often to me that my first thought is that this is probably the wrong idea, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Or at
and
least,
how do we know? How do you know with Cannibalt? How did you know? How do you know it was a good idea to me? How do you know?
so
Did you suspect it was going to be successful?
not uh I mean, effectively, no. I thought I had done. I knew that I had done what I mostly had set out to do. But it did have a pattern, and it has a pattern. It's a thing that I lost, which was very. It's a thing that I genuinely knew when I was making Cannibal, and then I think partly because it got popular, I lost something in my process, and part of the small games work I've been doing has been trying to get this back into my process. Is like Cannibal was not the design I sat down. The design I shipped is not what I sat down to make.
Right, of course.
There have many things in common, but I was quite flexible with how I was implementing things and what I was implementing, and relatively inflexible about what I thought of as the something like a player fantasy. So there was an idea, there was like a feeling that I thought this little game should have. So for Cannibal, that was sometimes you have a dream where you're like running really, really fast and you're almost falling, but you never actually fall, right?
Right.
I was like, that's what I want. I just played Mirror's Edge and I was really mad about Mirror's Edge. Instead of writing an angry blog post, I decided to make a flash game about it.
Right.
But that was the feeling that I wanted, was like, I just want to be like just flying along, barely in control. I want to be barely in control all the time, but I want that to be, I don't want to think about controls. I don't want to think about level design. I just want to like, just keep boiling it down. But the design on paper was there's going to be a series of levels, and the jumping is going to be based on Tony Hawk.
Right.
Since the controls are so simple, the jump needs to have a certain amount of
complexity, right?
Yeah, a strategic element or something like that. Started testing it, and pretty much right away it was like, this is bad. You can't, to go so fast that you feel barely in control, the jumping has to be like Mario. You have to be inputting it after you've already done it. Otherwise the game has to slow down too much. And then after a while it was like, I can't have levels or a game ending either, because I'm running out of time and it doesn't make any sense for this game. So it needs to be a different progress structure, right? So the game that I sat down to make is not the game that I actually made, but the heart of it, the thing that I wanted to feel, that I wanted to feel as a player, every time I press the button, or what's going on in my brain, the feel of it, the texture of that, the like smell of that, whatever that, we don't even have like a word for this, but the essence, I guess, the essence of this, the essential thing, that really didn't change very much. But I was really flexible with like, how do you achieve this essence? How do you share this essence with somebody? And I think that I feel like I lost track of that, and part of making little games again, unconsciously or otherwise, I think it's one of the things that's been happening is I feel like I've been relearning that, and starting with like a feeling as a player. And it could be like a really simple feeling. Like it'll be like, I want to make a, so I think we've talked about this before, but I hate Sokoban games. And I've made at least 6 of them in the last 6 months, which is stupid and fine. But part of what I'm doing is like, I want to like Sokoban games, but the kind of challenge in them doesn't make sense in my brain a lot. And so I've been thinking about, how do you make Sokoban games where you get to break the rules? So it's a little bit of a fantasy of like, I'm doing a block pushing game, but I can't get the block through here. What if I had bombs? Right? That obviously breaks a normal Sokoban level. You can't just add bombs to a Sokoban game and have it be a game, probably. But you could start designing new Sokoban levels that take that fantasy into account, or whatever. Or it might even be a little more abstract. Like, I love, kind of puzzle game that I love is like Elekhead is a great example, I think. And some of the strawberry rooms in Celeste, where the puzzle looks impossible. Like you look at it and you go, oh, there's no way, I can't do this. It's too complex. And then you start cooking up a plan. All right, I'm going to move this thing, go down here, cross over, hit both buttons in a row, and then climb up this thing. And then after like 20, 30 more seconds, you go, oh, no, I can just go around the thing and grab the thing.
Right, right,
there's like a joke in the level almost
right,
where,
right.
and so now you're having like this cute conversation. I feel like I'm in conversation with a player now. I'm like, okay, we were on an arc, we were building up the levels to be more and more complex, and I threw this really, really hardcore level at you, and it looked impossible. But then when you realized, it's like you were saying earlier, like that realizing something about the game you didn't realize before. Oh, I can just do blah. That was there the whole time.
Right.
And then I'll just invent whatever game system or game mechanics or theming thing or obstacle needs to be added to facilitate that feeling or that experience. Then I just add that as it's needed or whatever. But the thing I'm not trying to go through a game design document and then grade myself based on how good it turned out. Right? Like I have like usually like a little bit of a fantasy or an essence that I would love a stranger that I think is fun. I think it's cool. I think maybe not very many games do it. And maybe I could do something, and then a stranger would also get to have that fun
Right. I
feeling
understand.
or whatever. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
we
think
have very very different processes, you and I. It's like every time I try to do what you described, like I want to evoke this feeling. I pretty much I failed every time I try to do that. I cannot, like, I cannot think about things that way. Okay, I don't know if it's the limitation that I have or the fact that my brain goes to very specific places and it doesn't actually care what I want.
yeah.
But but like for Dragon Sweeper, for example, the way it was born is that it was like all I wanted was I wanted to make a game where there was a grid of buttons with monsters in them. That was that is how it started. I just want to click on monsters on a button, right? And then and I started there. I started that idea by just doing that. I had a grid with buttons with monsters on them. And I was started thinking, what do I do with this? What can I do with this? And then the next idea that came out was like, how do I make the positions in which the monsters are matter, right? Why does it matter that this monster is here and not over there? Why does it matter, right? So I was trying to figure it out. And then the next idea was, what if I hide them and just use like a Minesweeper mechanic so you can find them, right? And then the next, that gave me pretty much the core of what Dragon Sweeper is, which is how do we know what the monsters are, right? Because that's what the game is about. Like, where is everything in this game, right? And then that gave me the next idea, which is what if the actual sprites representing the monsters matter, right, to the gameplay? So if this monster is facing this way, it's telling you something. But when it dies, it does these things. It tells you something else. And then you're just trying to figure out where things are, right? But I never set out to do any of this. It was just like, no, I just bump into this by starting with a feeling, which is like all of my games. One thing that have in common is that I always start by the most basic interaction that you have. And it was like in this case, it was just a grid of buttons that with monsters that you click. That's all, right?
Yeah.
So all my games start with that. That's why they tend to be UI simple. All my games tend to be very simple in terms of interaction, right? So storyteller just drag characters into a frame. I wish I were the moon, just move stuff around, and it's always minimal interaction.
Yeah, and which I think, like, I do think that's one of these things that often serves this goal of, like, I think this is a huge part of, like, how do you, like, if you're talking about on some level, wanting to make games, regardless of how difficult or challenging the game is, wanting to make them for some kind of this big, weird, quiet audience of people who are really hungry for this kind of thing. I do think that, like, it's not exactly that you have to have simple controls, but this idea of the biggest idea you can have about interface just being like, there's software somewhere and there's a human made out of meat somewhere else, and they're supposed to do something. Like that big idea of interface and the idea that that does, like, it's okay to ask people to learn stuff, but maybe two things top, like
Right.
that would be like if they only have to, if you do boil down the interface and you streamline the interface, and the interface is easy exactly the way a movie's interface is relatively easy, or a book's interface is relatively easy, once you spend 7 years becoming literate or whatever. The uh, Then the content can be extremely deep, extremely weird, extremely challenging,
Right.
and
Mhm.
can start weird and get weirder and all of that stuff. But the interface, I I do think there's something about that needing to be kind of invisible
Right.
somehow to people, or rapidly become invisible, even if it's annoying for the first 5 seconds or the first 30 seconds or something. At that point they're not thinking about it anymore, and then they're doing the real thing inside of it. And I think, like, but so, and I think this has been on my mind a lot lately too, because I think, like, sometimes this is like very conventional wisdom for prototyping in general for people, right? Like, oh, start small, just get the basics working, go into the engine, do da. But I feel like that's so often presented as like, um, step one, and step two is
Right.
add all this stuff from your design document, right?
Right.
But I think our process in both cases is very much like, do step one and see what it is at all.
Right.
Like, maybe we're chasing a feeling. Like, I'd be curious, like, I like, why, what was it about putting monsters on button? Like, do you have a sense of like, were you playing something where you were like, oh, this would just be better if it was just monsters on buttons? Or was that just uh like the simplicity of that was attractive? Like, it felt, and and there's nothing else contemporary where
Right.
that's the main thing that you
Right.
do.
Right. 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 So no, I guess what happened was that one thing, if you want one survival skill that I started developing all these past years, is that whenever I think of a game idea, the first thing I do is try to picture a screenshot in my head,
Mm,
and if I want to play that, then maybe it's a good idea.
yeah,
Play
yeah,
that, right?
yeah, yeah.
Uh, and in my mind, like having a grid of buttons with monsters in them. Like if I saw a screenshot of that on Steam, I would probably
Mm,
buy it regardless of what it is, right? So I don't care what it is. I want
yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
And I imagine like very beautiful pixel art, which Dragon Super doesn't have because I cannot do it. I mean, I wish I had your skill to do that. It would make me tremendous. It would make me tremendously happy if I could do art at the level you can do for my own prototypes. I would make more games if I could do what you do.
Oh, just
You know
keep
what
making
I
it
do?
smaller and smaller.
Yeah, no, that's what I do, right? But even
My,
then, there's a limit. There's a limit. You know what I do? I do the cheesiest to make myself not be bored or depressed at my own art in my games. I do the cheesiest thing, which is I slap a CRT shader on it. And
oh,
just
okay.
by doing that, like even my crappy grids, pixel art
Yeah,
grids, start looking like something, right? When you have
yeah,
the CRT shader, it looks like a thing, and I'm like, all right, yeah, this is going somewhere, right? And maybe it's just a rectangle, right? Just a
yeah,
rectangle, but that's fine. It's good enough.
yeah.
But if I could make good pixel art, Dragon Super would be beautiful, right? Because that's what I saw in my head when I started thinking about this idea. It's a grid
Oh,
of button with beautiful pixel art monsters on it, right? So maybe I don't know, maybe Loop Hero or something like that, like something
oh, yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
like a bit baroque or something. I imagine something like that, but I cannot execute right. I cannot execute that kind of art, right?
Well,
So
and I think that's
I just
interesting because, like, I feel like um, the kind of, like, especially when the game started to tip toward Minesweeper, I feel like the the pixel art not being um, exclusively the output of the best pixel artist in the world or something was like opposite of an obstacle. Like I felt like it was very like, oh, this is Minesweeper. This is kind of like classic Windows game vibes, you know, like this is not like um because the
It's not a gamey game.
yeah, well, and but the legibility of everything was like through the
Right.
roof. But yeah, it did have like I felt like it made it, you know, possibly I never know what these things, but like I would say there's not a 0% chance that that was a big part of accessibility for that game is going like, okay, so the gameplay, the puzzle, the mental activity of this game is really very new, and probably the closest thing to it is Desktop Dungeons, which is one of the most
Right.
hardcore
Mm-hmm.
one-screen RPGs you could play. Um,
Mm-hmm.
hardest core roguelike, right? That's the mental space of this game, but the interface, the art, the controls, the familiarity of Minesweeper, but right,
Right.
all of that stuff for me, I feel like that added up to something where, like, even me as a big pixel art nerd, like, I literally never crossed my mind of like, oh, you know, Dragon Sweeper would be great if the pixel art
Right.
was a little bit better. Like that wasn't part of it at all. Like I felt like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is approachable. The interface is like invisible to me. I can tell exactly what all
Sure.
these features are.
Sure,
And
sure.
now,
But now we get to down to the part of who we are making our games for. Like, if I'm going to ship Dragon Sweeper on Steam, I will need to do something about that pixel art, right? Also
mm,
because I'm going to sell the game through that. It may not matter.
yeah,
It
yeah,
may not be necessary for the game to be successful, but it sounds like a very good strategy to increase its chances on Steam, right? And
yeah.
now, if you told me no, this is just for the web, no Steam,
Yeah.
then maybe I should even try to make it simpler, right? Even like
Mm,
less information load, so people who come to it are not thinking, oh, this is a gamey game. I need to know gamey stuff in order to play it, right? Uh,
right.
does it matter? Does it matter? Is it? Am I right what I'm saying or not? Who knows? I don't know.
Um, I don't know because like I think because I think there's a third possibility here, which is the deep appeal of there's a kind of game where the mouse cursor is a knight's gauntlet, right?
Right.
And I think as soon as the mouse cursor turns into a knight's gauntlet, something happens in your brain that's good, you know. And
Okay.
I think Dragon Sweeper is in that um, headspace kind of
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
and like I don't know how to I never know how to evaluate these things, and like I guess I end up going back to really like actually I think this is a great example. This is the thing that I feel like I'm still grappling with big games, small games, mixing this stuff together, is this kind of question, because we just pivoted to basically, instead of talking about things that we knew were delightful, to speculating about random audiences' preferences or whatever, right? And so, but making the thing that you knew was delightful got you the 1 million players. And then,
Right.
like, what is this tendency for us to be like, well, that worked great. Anyway, setting aside that mindset, let's guess what kind of dragons will sell best on Steam, right?
Right.
And I don't even know that that's incorrect for us to do. Maybe that is the right next step for us to do as designers and as responsible business people or something. And I don't actually know, but I think like increasing. This is the best way to put this. I want to believe that the you making all the little pixel art guys to put on the thing and kind of like having fun making them and drawing them on a CRT thing and putting them in is part of why the game is fun to play somehow.
Right.
whether that is just it helped you have fun making it so that it could get done at all,
Mhm.
or or again a little bit mystical, but something about you and having fun drawing little guys leaked in there in ways that are hard for us to put our fingers on. And like the same, because like it's like a overworking a painting, right? Or like sometimes you see like a really great acrylic painter's finished piece and it might be kind of stale, and then you'll see their pencil sketch for the piece and it's so alive, there has
Right.
so much going on. And I think like the thing that I'm always wondering and I don't have a good answer for is like I know for like this painter sold the acrylic painting and nobody bought their pencil sketch, but the pencil
Right.
sketch is 20 times better than the finished painting, I think. So
Mhm.
what is that? What do I do with that
I don't
information?
know. I don't know. I guess in one sense, it's what we do, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, we just do something else, have a different job, and make games on the side, and we just ship whatever we want, and we ship the stuff that we enjoy doing, and forget about it. You don't even
Yeah.
look at the numbers because you don't care.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but it's a thing we do is that we turn these things into something that requires people, right? We assemble these
Mhm.
teams and we get these people in, and you start building something that is never going to be what the original idea is. Never going to be that. It's always going to be its own thing. And
Yeah.
I guess that happens in part because this is how the world works for us, at least for now, right?
Yeah.
You do
Yeah.
that, you make a high production value version of a good idea, and then you sell it on Steam, and you're going to probably, if you did a good job and you're lucky, you make money out of that, and pay people, and and
Yeah.
and to pay people so they get better at what they do, and they get to be better artists and sound designers, uh, and and we're living in a time in which that is allowed and is a way to live off of video games.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I guess our job, your job, and my job is to not is to not fuck up, right? When we do that.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Sorry, after you told me it was PG-13. I'm sorry about that.
You're all good, Daniel.
And we're supposed to do a good job at that. And if I decided to just, I could grab the Dragon Sweeper version that I have, make it downloadable version in a day, put it on Steam
Mhm.
at $2, I don't know, whatever, and it make more money, or more money minus the cost.
Yeah.
It may make more money than the commercial version I'm thinking of making.
Right.
It may be
Right.
the case. It may be the case. It is possible that that is the
Yeah.
case, right?
Yeah.
And I don't need
Absolutely.
anybody. I don't need anybody. I don't need nowadays. I don't need anything. I just
Right.
take a day to make a downloadable version, and I'm done, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and and
You needed to do leaderboards and then that would be it. And out it would go.
yeah. I'm
And
not even that.
produce.
I just ship it. Whatever.
Right.
I don't use my time. I just ship it, right?
Yeah.
And charge
Yeah.
you $2 for it, and maybe people are going
Yeah.
to be happy, and I'm going to make money, and I don't need to build a team to do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Steam Deck
But
tax.
it's sort of what we can. But we can, Adam. But we can do that. We can assemble a team and do something that is slightly bigger, and we trust ourselves to do a good job at it, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do believe as well that we are probably increasing the amount of money the game is making by going through all this slog of hiring people, and
Yeah.
taking
Well, I
and
think
taking
like
years and taking years to ship our
we think
games. And
I think we feel like we're hedging our bets at least. We're trying to make more opportunities, more ways in. Oh, the game has really gorgeous screenshots instead of what I felt like making that Thursday screenshots.
right.
That's another way for people to connect with the game or recognize that it might be something that they liked. And here's a really cool trailer, and here's the extra game modes. So there's a wider range of ways to play the game, outside of kind of what we felt like doing that Wednesday, and yeah, and I think like, yeah, I mean that's like that's what our companies are based on, that idea. Um, and but yeah, I definitely go back, and I don't think about like, oh, should we stop doing that exactly? But it's sort of like, if we, what is there? Uh, I think increasingly I feel like the puzzle is what could we bring to the bigger processes, the bigger products, the bigger team? What, if anything, can we add to that or try to preserve from this arbitrary feeling, this instinctive process? Because I think it's hard, because, and I think like to me the hardest thing is probably that when we're doing these small games, these instinctive games, there's this huge amount of uncertainty, right? Like you go like, I'm making a game today. It's little guys, they're on a grid, and then somebody goes like, oh well, how's that a game? And you go,
Yeah.
well, let's press some buttons, and probably I'll make levels for it or something later. I don't know. It'll be fine. Um, and that seems like not the best way to run a big team project, right? But I think
Right.
like something about the magic, something about that kind of game design seems like it depends on that openness, right? It depends on that. And so like I feel like the tug of war that I've imagined happening in terms of big games versus small games, part of it boils down to this idea of certainty versus uncertainty versus confidence versus wanting to do that opportunistic game design, that exploitative game design, to recognize partway through implementing something, oh, this is a game about this is a detective game.
Right.
Like Dragon Sweeper is like, oh, this is a monsters on a grid game, and at some point it becomes a detective game.
Right.
It turns into Clue or Sudoku or something.
Mm-hmm.
And and then I think it becomes really pretty potent and pretty magical around then a little
Right.
bit. And,
Right.
and then you start going like, oh, the UI is going to be about, it's a detective game now, and what buttons you can press, and the Monsterpedia, like everything now is unfolding from the like, how do I give the player these pieces so they can form a complete picture in their head, but the complete picture is never really in the game ever.
Right.
And at what cadence does that need to happen? And that's all the design is like reactive to that opportunity. But I think that is, that's this process that involves so much uncertainty. And then when you want to make sure everybody is like paying rent and understands what they're supposed to do as their job, then it's like we need to have as little uncertainty as possible, ideally.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's been
Yeah, it's like that's exactly what happened to me with Storyteller. Storyteller didn't take 15 years because I was doing production for 15 years. I could have made Skyrim probably by myself, right? So it was not a production thing. Like all the time was going back and forth with the design, dragging a team behind me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a small team. It was only 2 people besides me, but still, it was a very bad place to be. We had we have a lot of friction and problems because of that, because of all the back and forth that comes naturally sometimes when you're doing a design, especially of something that you're not sure how it's supposed to work, right? So at one point, like I came out of trauma, because that's like Storyteller was a traumatic experience. It was bad. So one thing that came out thinking from that project is that from now on, like my idea is to do things like I did with Dragon Sweeper, which is I make a prototype, I put it out there for free. I just put it out there. I don't care if it gets cloned or I don't care. I won't care about any of that. I will put it out there and I will triage just seeing what happens with game, right?
Yeah.
And if it passes the triage, then I'm willing to fund it or get money for it or self-fund it, whatever. I don't care. But I want to
Yeah.
start with a thing that is already certain. And what I'm going to do with Dragon Sweeper is what I told you. I'm going to grab the idea that already works, and I'm going to grow it from its core. Right? I'm not going to say, yeah, it's Dragon Sweeper, but actually there's a campaign and a story, and I'm not going to do any of that. Right? I don't want to spend 2 years on my ivory tower making a game that nobody's going to see for years. Yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. So what I did for Dragon Sweeper is how I want to do things from now on. I do a small thing, I try ashes. If it passes, we do it, right? And we put the minimal amount necessary to make the game work. Because one other thing that you were talking before about, having to add these, game modes and collector things, that we did some of that for Storyteller as well. And I feel it's a bit of an artificial need. And I think it's related mostly to these value, like the video game sommelier kind of thing. We are bound to that. But probably if we didn't need to do that, most of the game would not do that. Would not go into, now we have the time attack mode, and now we have the boss mode, and you would be, you know what? I don't think the game actually needs that mode, so I'm not going to do it because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's relatively low cost for making the game feels meatier and bigger and with more possibilities. That one thing, and I'm not ashamed to say this, but Storyteller, at the end of Storyteller, there's a sort of a collector stamp kind of thing, in which you collect stamps by doing fun stuff with the game inside of the game. When we came up with that idea, I was against it. Like, I don't want to do that. But in truth, what the effect that it had is that for the video game sommelier, it makes the game more open-ended. Some of those stamps are a pain in the ass to get, right? So you're probably going to say, you know what, I don't care about the stamps, but now I feel like there's some part of the game I haven't seen, right? There's something to the game that feels bigger, and it was very cheap for us to do it, so we did. But I feel dirty about it. I still feel dirty about it, and in fact, for this update, I'm thinking about doing something about that. But I mean that, like, not trying to. I don't want to use the word bloat, because these things that get added to these games are not bloat, in the sense that they can be fun, they can be interesting. Maybe they have a harder mode in which the monsters move at twice the speed, and some people really enjoy that. I'm not saying doing those things are wrong. It's just that we feel compelled to do them, regardless of whether they're a great idea or not, because we need to make games feel like they're worth the money we're asking for. So I wish I didn't have to do that. And for Dragon Sweeper, what I'm thinking is that, well, maybe I'll just do the daily challenge, just make the game cheap, and I try to make the game cheap, right? So try to get the development of the game to be cheap.
Yes.
And I charge a low price for it. It's $5 or whatever. And maybe I can get away with it without doing all the stuff that would turn it into a $10, $15 game, right?
Right. Yeah. I think it's hard, because I do think, like, there is, for the most part, like, because my attitude about some of this stuff now has become relatively extreme from making all these little Pico 8 games, where, like, I get the game done. By the time I have the game actually done, it's usually maybe 200 lines of code. It's got all 20 or 30 little puzzles that I think are worth playing and worth exploring. And then I have to, like, make a title screen. And I'm just like, seriously, a title screen? Oh, and now people are going to want to see their score at the end of the game too. This is such a pain in the ass. Like, who? What a drag. And I have to sit there. And now by the time the game's actually done, it's 700 lines of code. I've used up all the remaining rest of the graphics just to show their stupid high score or whatever.
Right.
But I also know in my heart that the thing has to be in some kind of container. And I think
Right.
like in general, like if our job gets to be make up a silly fun game nobody's made up before, make a beautiful version of it with really cool people, upload it basically for free to some website, and then like tens of thousands of people play it and derive a ton of joy, but I also have to add stamps.
Right.
Like at some point I just have to, I know I feel like I do have the capacity to go like, oh, stamps is like a title screen. I
Right.
kind of don't really think it's that important, but I know it has to be there for us to be allowed to do the rest of this stuff, and I kind of give it a pass for that. But I
One
do
thing,
think I think
sorry,
that's intentional.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, just to say one thing, is that so far I managed to get away with not having a main menu in any of my games.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Now, speaking about the video game sommeliers, it was I get requests on the Steam forums for it.
Yeah.
Like, maybe add a main menu. Like, no, I don't want it. Why do you want it for? Oh, by the way, another fun story about Storyteller is that the stamps, when we first launched, so we launched the game in 2 phases, pretty much. We launched it like say in March 2023, and then we shipped an update in October. The update got everything that we kind of wanted there to be in the game, so it was a very big update. It added a bunch of stuff. The stamps were added in the update. They were not there on the initial version of the game, right? Mm-hmm. In the initial version of the game, what the stamps were, we made as achievements on Steam, right? They were Steam achievements.
Yeah.
So when we made the stamps, I removed all the old achievements. And added new ones, right? Added new ones, like you got all the stamps, right? You finish the game, you got all the stamps. So we added that, but I removed all the rest of the achievements. I still get bad reviews for that. I mean, if you go into Storyteller, you can see the bad reviews saying, "Man, where are my achievements?" Right?
Yeah. You took them away from them.
I took them away from it. They're still punishing me for it.
That's a great betrayal. Oh man. Aster, what was your second question?
Oh gosh. I mean, we've gone through a lot of them. I mean, I think like just listening to you talk about the shared experience of this, and you're both using words like joy and like, I think that the thing that you're like, for me as an outsider and just like a creative person in general, I'm not surprised that you feel more joy and more creative in this situation where there's just like less risk, right? Like that's just like, that's human nature to be like at your most creative when you also have the least amount of risk to be dealing with. But I'm wondering, and it sounds to me like there's not actually an answer, and that's valid. But I'm sitting here wondering, like, what of these, for lack of a better word, like experiments that both of you have done and are doing, and on this smaller, less risky scale, like, what are you able to take from that maybe you would bring into your next larger project if you did one, or the larger project that you're currently chilling in and with no way out? Like are you taking anything from this experience, or are they too different to even sort of do that? And if the answer to that is I don't know, go for it. That's fine too, because it's just what was sticking in my head as you were talking.
Yeah, I think what happened, at least my experience with it, is that for bigger projects, when I'm working on bigger projects, I do get some of the joy of making the original versions, but they come in very small doses over time. Like they are in the middle of doing a bunch of stuff that, it's not super enjoyable. I have to do it anyway. And sometimes there's very brief moments in which I get a small surge of that feeling of, I made progress here. There's something happened with the game right now, right? Something's changed. It's not just the slog of getting things done, but it's also something has improved, has clearly improved, or we added something that I wasn't thinking about before. But it comes in very, very small doses over time.
Hmm.
That's my experience with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
It's
been having
less of
somebody.
that like gratification that you get from being able to like make something in a week or a month and have it out and
Yeah.
have it done. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say I think my takeaway from the last like 6 or 8 months has been to, I think, couple of like a lot of stuff. I feel like I'm taking a lot of notes for next big project, and some of that is along the lines that Danielle was saying about like, oh, maybe one of these little games could grow up to be a big game later or something, or slightly bigger game, or a less square version of the game maybe, or something, right? But and another version is like uh, part of making a little game is you don't have to do quote unquote good programming. You can do really very bad programming, because the thing is so small that you're unlikely to make a big mess for yourself. But I feel like I've learned a little bit of things that might be useful on a bigger project in terms of, call it like, I've been calling it like data boundary or data hygiene, but like thinking about um, where game data lives and how complex it is and stuff like that, such that but even that really serves this third thing, which is the thing I am thinking about actively for our current project, which is I think a big part of what's fun about the little projects is the turnaround time is almost nothing. So the amount of time from I had a thought, I saw an opportunity, I noticed something. I think noticing is like my go-to like game designer verb right now. I think that is like the thing that I do most as a game designer. I don't actually think up that many ideas. I have like literally like one idea a week maximum, and that's a kind of good month. But I do think I have developed some capacity for noticing things and seeing things, and trusting that if I'm noticing it, there might be a reason, and I should poke at it or pull at it or something. But that noticing loop needs really fast turnaround time, I think, in order to make the most of it. So when you're doing a little small project, the process of noticing something and then trying to take advantage of that or see if it leads somewhere, that's like minutes, seconds sometimes, which it sounds like it's exaggerating, but it literally might be like pause game, move enemy over here, unpause game. Nope, that feels way better. Now I know something about the design I didn't know before. And I know that discovering that is interesting. And maybe I can share that with the player too. Like that's a huge chunk of game design that you've just unlocked or unwrapped. And I think a thing as soon as the project starts to get bigger, I think one of the biggest risks and one of the things that I think has the biggest chilling effect on game design has to do with like turnaround time. So it's easy to suddenly go from noticing an opportunity and doing something about it in 40 seconds to noticing something and then being able to see if you were right 3 weeks later. Right. And now it's like, oh, that's too long. We're not going to be able to, my game design friend, game designer and other publisher, Tanya Short, sometimes talks about doing game design in exploitation phase, which is like, I've made most of the game, I've made a bunch of the game parts, and now I'm kind of putting them together, and I'm noticing little things, and I'm taking advantage of little things, and I'm like improvising, I'm making little discoveries. I'm like, but a lot of the game already works. Most of the pieces are there. And now we're just taking advantage of what we've already built. And I feel like a lot of what I like to do as a game designer, and I think a lot of what people find memorable, like on my most recent Pico 8 game, where you're like a little guy in the tunnels, you have bombs and you blow stuff up. Like, I don't think the idea of what if you're a guy with bombs is where the good game design is in that game. I think it is me sitting down with empty levels and this one game mechanic basically, and seeing how many levels I can make. Like, what if you blow this up? What if you set the bombs off too close to the exit? Oh, that could destroy the exit. That would be funny And now that's like a little discovery the player can make too. Okay, that's a thing. What if I do this level this way? What if I do this level this way? So like I feel like a lot of what maybe I can offer as a game designer is not what if you're a guy in the tunnels with a bomb. It's now that you're a guy in the tunnels with bombs, what are the different ways to explore that? What's funny about that? What can we reveal, and what do we reveal in what order? Not to secretly tutorialize the game, but just the pleasure of realizing something you didn't realize previously or something. And I think it would be cool to, I think that's hard to replicate in a larger team, larger scale, higher production value, production environment for all the reasons we've been talking about. But I do think there are things that I think could be, introduced or prioritized to try to cut down on that turnaround time and just have a shorter, more because I think in pretty much every discipline, if the amount of time it takes from your work is done to you can see it in the game, or you can fight against that enemy in the game, or you can do that level, or you can see that animation, like, and every time somebody turns something in, you go, thanks, hopefully you can see it in action in 4 to 9 weeks. Like, I think that's taking something out of the process for them. And again, like, I don't think I'm going to get that turnaround time down to 60, 80 seconds in most cases, but I think prioritizing that, taking that seriously, like defending that as essential, as some kind of labor right, basically.
Okay.
For everybody. That's where my mind is at lately. But I think it's tricky. I don't know that I can say like, oh, this is how you do it. Blah. Right. But I think it is a thing that I'd like to, I think like this hygiene about game data on future projects, this setting and defending limitations about things when it preserves that rapid turnaround time, taking that really seriously, trying to put that in the middle of the process, I think that might be really important. And I feel like you can see in some of the bigger production value games that I really enjoy, like a Dark Souls game or something, I feel like you can see that as a player. You can see that they've played that first level 200 times, and that it's easy for them to rebalance all of their guys' HPs, and it's easy for them to add the cursed guy by remixing 3 animations they already had and changing his armor color and making him 20% bigger. Like, they have all that stuff, and I feel like there's large scale master stroke game design stuff happening, but there's so much of that other kind of game design happening. And I think that is something that you get for free in a small game. And I think you can lose in the big game if So I'm thinking pretty actively in pretty specific ways right now, like what of that can we get back? What of that could be reintroduced? How do we prioritize some of that stuff, just with the caveat of, if I knew how to do it, it would already have been done.
Right.
Yeah, well, recognizing it, it's so cliche, but like recognizing it is the first step. And I think like doing all of these like games that you've been doing and having that realization that this is something that like your creative process needs or thrives on, I think is cool. And it's cool to see even just how you're like, I can see as an outsider looking in how a lot of the things that you are doing in these small games are actually really, really present in some of the other games that you've made, including the current project, Usual June. And like some of the like mindset that you have and creativity with limitations and stuff, to me, is really, really present. And so like seeing that sort of like boil down into these smaller games that you've been putting out is cool, I think. Like, again, as just like an outsider looking in. And it's actually something that the both of you kind of share, that like simplicity in design, opening up the creativity of the game. So I wonder if that's something that you want to speak to a little bit more, like why you feel it is like that simplicity in UI or simplicity in like what buttons you need to click makes for allowing you to make these more creative, really interesting puzzles, and like what it is about that simplicity that kind of opens you up for that. You talked about it a little, so if that's all you have to say, that's okay. But I wanted to push on it a bit.
So thinking about that, as you were speaking after, is that there's something that is maybe obvious to Adam and I because we share pretty much the same game development history, which, by the way, is an interesting thing to think about because both you and I, we like live very far off each other in different cultures, but we still share pretty much the same game development background. So we can speak on level terms between you and I, even though we belong to very different cultures. One day I will give a talk about this because I don't think American developers are aware of this. That there's people with very different backgrounds that are thinking about things differently, but still can communicate. So there's a thing going on with that, but I digress. What I was going to say is that when I talk to like young game designers now, they tend to start from a game they like. They say playing Fortnite or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, I played this game and I want to make games like that, right? So it's a platform and everything. They start from there, right? So I play this game. They have no idea what it entails to make the games they're thinking about. They have no clue, which is to be expected. But it's very different. The process is very different from you and I because we come from the Flash era in which you needed to make simple games. You could not make a massively multiplayer. It was super hard, super expensive, and not didn't make any sense. Some people tried, right? And some people actually succeeded, but it was not what you did back in the day. We didn't do that. You need to make a game that was approachable, that was accessible, that didn't look intimidating because you were competing for space with a bunch of other Flash games at the same time. So it was I think it was a bit of a survival trait to keep things simple. So that's why we tend to avoid Baroque UIs because Baroque UIs in the Flash era, in which you have to remember that resolutions were much lower back then, were not a good idea. It was almost a recipe to not get any attention for yourself. So we all strive to get simple ideas, and we sort of stuck with that because I personally think it's actually a very good way to approach game design. Like, just grab something simple and see what's around it, right?
Yeah, I think actually I'm curious because I feel like I was developing, I think before, like around the same time that I started programming, I haven't interrogated this very much, but around the same time that I was just starting to make some Flash games, I feel like I already had all these different ideas about games that I would want to make or games I thought were cool. Like I really liked kind of like import Japanese arcade games. So like Metal Slug or these beautiful pixel art games that had just these they were simple in the fact that they were 2D, but otherwise they were just like these like really high production value, really bombastic designs. But I feel like I already had there was a kind of a magic trick it's essentially like the magic trick of Tetris in a way, which is this is a game made out of nothing. And it's the most beautiful game that anybody's ever made. And it's genuinely made, like the first, like the original version of Tetris ran in a ASCII game mode. Right. It was printing text characters it wasn't even rendering pixels, really, it was printing, like blocks were like 2 square brackets spaced out the right way or something, right? And it was not made by a professional game designer, you know, and it's like, I think semi-objectively like the most beautiful video game ever made, and maybe the most beautiful solitaire game ever made, right? And so I think I had ingested that somehow as a kid whose friends had a Game Boy and something, where I had, like, in addition to loving Wind Waker, which I was never going to be able to make, even though I kind of thought maybe I could, or Metal Slug, which I'd never be able to make, even though I kind of thought I could, or Metroid Prime, right? Like, there were these really bombastic, high production value things that were blowing me away constantly. I'd try to make a Counter-Strike level sometimes, and it would turn out terrible. But there was just this, because I remember even in college, I was trying to make simple 1v1 games that were kind of elegant in some way, like, and original. So very few moving parts. There hasn't been a game like this before. So something was laid in with that early that I think does complement exactly what you said, which is also just the practical concerns, both as somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, but wanting to release something and having to acknowledge at some point, this game can't be made out of anything.
Right.
Like, I get 2 pieces, otherwise it's never going to come out, because it's not even my full-time job. I'm just making games on Friday nights or something at this point.
Right.
And I've tried to make complex ones and they never get done. So eventually I figure out, well, it has to have 2 things or no things. Otherwise it's never going to be I'm never gonna be able to show it to anybody, and nobody's ever going to think it's fun. And that's part of what I'm doing here. But I think that was,
So you were driven to simplicity, but wanted to actually ship the things.
I really wanted somebody else to play it. Like, I don't know where that came from, but that was I think I was developing. I think the thing you're talking about of like, nobody's going to spend more than 7 seconds with this game if it's too confusing, which absolutely was a dynamic at the time. I think I came to that late, and I came in with these complementary elements of, I only have 2 days this month to make my own games, so it's probably not going to be able to consist of very much, combined with some kind of thing that I think you have this too, which is just the magic trick of, this game is made out of nothing, and it is blowing my mind. I can think about this game forever, even though it's made out of almost nothing. I do feel like we chase that a little bit, and that's a little bit where the process of, well, the first version of our games is almost nothing. The first thing we get running is almost nothing. We're not doing that because that is the dogmatic rule for how to do prototyping or how to do iterative game design. Like, we're doing it because we know our game is only going to get to have 2 other things in it. Like, we're making one. The reason we're not making this isn't the first of 17 things that are going to be in this game. The game is going to be made out of 3 parts. So if we make one, that's half the game. That's half of what we're doing already. But I think part of that is I think we just like that magic trick. Like, a game, there's probably a game that's as good as Dragon Sweeper that has 10 times as many moving parts, and we don't like it as much.
Yeah, totally.
We just don't.
We just don't.
Yeah, and it's just an aesthetic thing. It's just a preference. It's a taste thing. But yeah, I think, and I'm suspicious it's maybe slightly more than that, but I can't back it up. But I think there's something about games and systems where, when there's not very many moving parts and it keeps showing you more and more and more and more and more of what's possible with those very few moving parts, that it does something to our brains. I think like Go is popular for 5,000 years for right. Like, it's doing something to your brain. But I think there deep down there's some kind of magic trick. I only typed 20 lines of code. I only made 2 pieces of pixel art, and now I can't stop thinking about what might be possible if you put this thing next to this thing instead of this thing next to this thing. Something about that is just a
Yeah, I think calling it a magic trick is a good metaphor, but
yeah
it's especially because it's also a magic trick for us, because
yeah
you
yeah
have
yeah
this thing in which you're thinking about the game, and you're like, well, I guess it's going to work this way, and you try, and then try this other thing and this little variation here, and you look at it and you're like, well, I'll just keep going and see where it goes. Maybe I can make a level, and there's this obstacle here, and I work around it, and then you're just in that mode, not really expecting anything, and then suddenly you look at it and think, holy shit, I can do all this. I never thought I could do these things, but this, and it starts coming out, right? It's like, there's a thing, which
yeah
is, oh, I can make this and this other thing and this other idea. Yeah, I could make this thing work this way. And then it just, the game starts building itself, right?
yeah
Uh,
100%.
I guess that's a magic trick, I think, that you're talking about. It's like
Yeah
we manage to get a point where the game is making itself. When you make
yeah
a game that has several systems overlap with each other, um, um, it tends to happen that you don't get that, because you're
Mhm.
always controlling what's happening with the game, right? Because you have these things, you have all the cards, and there's the combat system, and then after that there's a collection system and
Mm,
the upgrade system, and then you're like, well, I don't know, man, it's just it's a combat game, whatever, right?
mm.
But you only have one thing. It's like, how do I? Is there something? Can you give it? It's like we're asking the system we're working on. Can you give me something
Yeah yeah yeah
that I did not put in,
yeah
right?
yeah yeah
And
exactly. I think
sometimes it happens. It's like it just starts giving
yeah
out, and you're like, yeah, this is what I wanted. This is the thing.
yeah yeah and I think it's really hard to explain if you haven't done this or thought about it this way before. I think it's weird to go up to somebody and say, I designed the game cooperatively with the game
With the
that I
game.
hadn't made yet but was making.
Yes.
And it's 100, it's exactly what the process is, and it's total nonsense, and it sounds like you're trying to like couch your role as a game designer in a more holistic something, and I think it's hard to convey sometimes that, like, no, there's no couching here. This is I have created I am gravitating toward and intentionally pursuing things that I think will push back in a way that will intrigue me, and I will, like, and that's my act of noticing is rooted in that. That's what I'm looking
Right.
for. I want to get something working, because I'm not really designing the game most people think about the way you design a game. I need to get something working so I can start noticing ASAP.
Exactly.
Basically,
Yeah.
I want to get
And
I want to get to noticing.
it's a skill, right? It's a
I think
skill
so.
that we develop, and we want to use it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
use
And
this
it's the
skill
funnest
of
thing.
noticing
Yeah.
thing, and picking the right system, and picking the right direction,
Well,
and,
and I,
and
I love how
noticing
much
the right
it's,
things.
yeah. And I love how much, because that's what I like as a player, right? I like noticing. I like going, oh, that guy never goes all the way to the end of the path. I can just cut around him and then drop in behind him or whatever. Like,
Right.
I feel like I think if your design is rooted in noticing, one advantage of that can be that your design process now has a quality that I think that I know I enjoy when I'm playing a game, but I think a lot of people enjoy when they're playing a game. And I think it's about this idea of like, oh, learning how to see a game, learning how to read a game is one of the fun things that you can do when you're learning to get better at the game, is that noticing thing. But I think it's like, I do think when step one of game is like, whack, monsters on the grid, bam, okay, this isn't a game, but this is a thing that I can poke at, and then I can notice things about it, and I can ask it questions and see what happens. Like, that's so close to what I want to be doing as a player. So I feel like on
Yeah.
some level this stuff adds up to this weird thing of I want and this is the thing I don't know how to bring into the big process at all, and I'm not going to try to figure out yet at all, is like, I think this is kind of special, this process of my game design process mirrors the pleasures that I want as a player somehow.
As a player.
The joy in my design process is somehow related to the joy of playing that I'm trying to replicate and I'm trying to share and that I recognize and that I think is fun. And somehow if those things are connected now, I feel like I'm doing less guesswork. I don't know if the game's going to be super popular or not, but I can feel kind of almost objectively confident that there's something in here because I'm still making it. I'm still having fun noticing things. And I think the designer's skill is maybe both a little bit in noticing, but also in the weird activity of going, okay, how do I make sure that somebody I've never met before has a good chance of noticing the thing that I just noticed kind of in the way that I noticed it. So now I need to replicate the laboratory conditions under which I did the noticing because I might be special, but I'm not that special. I'm basically a person. So the conditions under which I discovered this, I can make something quite like that. And I know what that is because I just did that. So now that's me being an idiot is a level that I can share with somebody, and then maybe they have the same feeling. And maybe I tune it up a little bit. I try to make it a little extra fun for them because it was a little weird for me. But yeah, I think there's something in there that I think is like pretty special and pretty good. I think it's hard to draw all of that up to a big project, but I think on these little games, and if we're trying to, when I'm thinking about like simplicity and creativity, I think that's where I'm putting that stuff right now.
Right. Yeah, the way I often describe it is that both players and ourselves as game designers, we approach the same game with the same attitude, trying to find the same things. The difference is, as game designers, we give them the guarantee that there's something to find, right? It's just the difference between us and them, that they have the guarantee that there is something to find, right? Because we do their work, right?
Yeah, I feel like our version is like, it's more exciting, but it's much more vulnerable.
Oh yeah, and it takes time and it's dangerous and
but yeah, I do think there's something in that, and I think the more your core design process is playerish, I think that's just like that's so much closer to where like most of the most popular video games in the world come out of that. Like League of Legends was Dota was a mod, right? Counter-Strike was a mod. Most of the other sort of super popular games are either super sandboxy or borrowing so heavily from other work. And so like the idea, I don't know. I think this is my axe to grind. I think part of creativity and simplicity, I think part of that is setting aside a little bit the idea that you're a godlike designer who's better than players or whatever. And you're saying like, no, I'm a meat person. I am the player, and I'm looking for a process that emulates that in some way. And I do feel like that kind of. I wonder how much of this. Do you have a sense of how much of this like? Because we've ended up often just kind of like just making puzzle games over and over and over, and I'm making puzzle games that I sometimes don't like to play or normally wouldn't like to play. But I wonder how much of that is like are puzzles somehow better suited to this attitude or this idea of kind of
this way of designing things. Like we pick a handful of very simple rules, and then we try to figure out what's interesting about them. It tends to work well with puzzle games. It's very effective in giving results, right? That you can turn into a game. I feel like say Vampire Survivors also has a bit of that, right? So what kind of weapons do we have? How do they combine? What kind of affect how does it affect readability of the level and all that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think there is some of that, not in the same density as,
Mm-hmm.
as puzzle games, but they do
Yeah,
have some of that as well. The thing
yeah.
is, and this is something I'm afraid of, is that the reason I started making puzzle games is because I made like my first game designers friends were puzzle game designers. You know, John
Mm,
Lowe
mm-hmm.
and Martin Bosch. They were doing puzzle
Yeah,
games, right? So and I was learning from them because I was just
yeah.
starting to do game design. So I started, getting myself involved with their process. I and that ended up, I ended up
Mm.
training to do puzzle game design. And then now I painted myself into a corner in which I am good at doing this thing, but
Right.
did I even want to do this thing? I didn't get into games to make puzzle games. So the only things, one rule that I established for myself, which I find it funny when I play your small games. The other day I was playing the Pope and the Vampire thing, is that I forbade myself. There's a very explicit forbidden rule for me as a game designer, is I don't do block pushing games.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
that is my big restriction. I am forbidding from doing that unless I'm
Mhm.
doing something else with it, like something like really really
Yeah, yeah.
different in a storyteller way, kind of different. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's that case, I am forbidding from doing any block pushing games, right?
Yeah,
Because I'm trying to break out from puzzle games. I'm actually trying to pull out of it.
yeah,
Um, I tend to fall into it because it's what I train for. So my
yeah,
mind goes
yeah,
there, right? But I wish I wasn't doing puzzle games anymore. I don't play puzzle games. Sometimes I do play puzzle games that I enjoy, but I never finish them. Like never.
yeah,
I never finish
yeah.
them. I play them while they're sort of easy, like maybe the first 25%,
Mhm.
30%. And when it starts getting annoyed, I bail. Right? It's like, no, I don't want to. Like, well, my brain hurts. I don't want to do this. Right?
Yeah.
So me doing these puzzle games is weird. It's weird even for myself. Like, what am I doing here? What am I doing these games? Right? So I'm still trying to figure out what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
would love to make a shooter, except every time I try to make a shooter, I would get annoyed at how much effort it takes to make a good shooter, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like at how a lot of it is polish. It's just
Yeah.
polishing everything, and it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's like
I've almost
it's
said
like
that a
you
couple
it's like you
times.
make it's like you make it's like your main menu, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
main
yeah.
menus,
Yeah.
and I don't want to polish bullet explosions, right?
Right, right.
Uh,
It's exactly that. And I've said on almost a couple times, I've been like, oh, I've got a little idea for like a little kind of like shoot 'em up kind of thing. And then I think about the idea of like programming my stupid update loop that will move all the bullets by like a little bit and it'll like read the bullet data out of a struct of stuff stored somewhere. And I'm just like, I would literally rather die than do that again. I cannot imagine. And I know that the right idea will come along and I'll be like, oh, that's just a chore, that's meaningless because this thing is
yeah.
going to be so fun, or it's going to be so fun to play, to get a little bit of this working and then play with it and see what it can do. But I think it's got to have, I would want to feel like I was doing something. I do think I would want to feel like I was doing something different, that there was going to be something. My one exception, I really want to make like a survival horror game. I think that would be great.
Okay,
Where
yeah,
like you
I
just shoot a
know.
guy like once in a while, but you like only every little bit.
Totally. I wanted to do that as well. It was one of my, like, when I'm thinking about making 3D games, I was like, I want to make a horror game. And
Yeah.
I have a very specific idea. It was like,
Oh,
there is only one monster. You are trapped in a confined space. And in fact, I thought it was going to be a bunker. Like, you're confined in the lockdown bunker with a monster, and you just need to survive. And then the Amnesia guys publish Amnesia the Bunker, and it's exactly my game. It has everything I wanted. It has like
uh-huh.
everything I wanted. They even thought about the part in which they say there should be a safe space in the bunker that the monster cannot go in. And
Yeah.
then you choose when you're going out and get yourself in danger, right?
Yeah,
So you have to,
yeah.
they even thought of that. It was I hate it when that happens. So
I
they
like
stole
that.
the only survival horror idea that I liked and I was willing to make. So
I like that it's still dangerously close to a puzzle game, though.
Yeah.
You're like,
I mean,
what if it's a survival horror game?
I will never get rid of it. Yes, I assume.
I don't want to interrupt, but we are at somehow already 2 hours. Do both of you have time to hang out for just a little longer in case there's some chat questions? Yeah. So chat, if you have any questions for Adam and Daniel, now is your time to throw them in the chat and we'll answer a couple of them before we run off for the day. But it has been so fun listening to the two of you chat and hearing what you have to say about game design and creating under limitations. It's been really fun and very, very enlightening, actually. So thank you both for hanging out during lunch. It's looking like perhaps there's no additional questions from chat, which is totally fine. We've covered a whole lot today, so. But yeah, thank you both so much for hanging out and answering our questions and chatting. Oh, we do have one question here. So when it comes to working on small games and then bringing joy or being exciting, how long do you give yourself permission to be frustrated before leaving it? That's a good question to end on.
So I have my process for this is backwards, which is I literally will, if I will work on the game for about an hour and just set it down. And then if I pick it back up again, it's because I'm interested in it. And if I don't pick it back up again, it was only an hour and I was just derping around on the computer for an hour and that's fine. At least I wasn't on Instagram. Like that's pretty much the whole process at the start. Is like, I'm just setting it down constantly. So like Cave of Cards is a really good example, I think. So that's like within a day of playing Dragon Sweeper, I was like, oh, I want to make a desktop Dungeons game. But I was like, but I want it to not have XP. I want to do not XP because Daniel this is the best version of that I've ever played. So I need to not do that. How do you make Dragon Sweeper with no XP instead? Because that's a totally different game, basically, hopefully. And it turns out that it is, but I pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. And after about maybe a week, and I only work on these things like an hour a day or something like that. But after about a week, I was pretty demoralized because it didn't feel right and it didn't look right. Like the thing you're talking about earlier of like, oh, when I look at it and I want to play it, that's most of why I'm messing around with this anyway. I kept looking at it and going like, I don't even want to play this. What am I doing? And it was a dumb thing. It didn't have like a vibe. The actual look, the layout was still cool. I still liked the layout of it, but it didn't have a vibe. So I just kind of like recolored everything to be a little moodier. And I was like, oh, this is great again. I love this game. This is great. And then I was willing to like fix some of the lingering game design problems and like polish up the UI or whatever. But yeah, my process for this is entirely just constantly be setting the game down. And if you never pick it up again, who cares? Like you're not under anything. Hopefully you've only worked on the game for 6 hours at that point anyway, because you've just been doing little bits and pieces. And like, I think, Daniel, I suspect your process is sort of similar to mine, but when we say like we're waiting for the game to tell us stuff, that's not as often we're not actually sitting at the computer anymore. Like we're done. It's 2 days later and we go, oh, you should have to go across like a water. And then we're back in and trying thing. Yeah. So my system is very much like, I think frustration and procrastination are great. I think everybody should have those feelings all the time and should listen to them and pay attention to them and just be totally ready to throw your work not in the garbage, but just put it in the pile of like, that was a fun hour. That's fine. That's like a totally acceptable, satisfying outcome for a thing. But like, you know, if you find yourself reaching into the pile and pulling the same thing out again and trying something else on it and pulling it out again and trying something else on it, then I think that's closer to like, oh, now you got something. Now because you're talking to the design and it's talking to you, kind of.
Right. My process is similar to that, except I need to spend more than an hour on my games because I'm not. I mean, you're using Pico 8, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just, I like Dragon Super I made on JavaScript and stuff, so I needed to spend many more hours in order to get anything to happen. So I need to spend more time than that. But my policy is sort of similar to Adam's in that I keep working on the game while I'm feeling that it may go somewhere. And when I get stuck and I'm feeling it's not going anywhere, I just put it down and not force myself to go back to it unless I feel, at least some time has passed, right? Because one thing that happens is when you start working on a game and then you get frustrated, even if you stop in time, going back to it, your brain is like, oh, we're going to go back to that frustrating thing. It's not really pleasant. So what I do in those cases, I just let time go by, like maybe a couple of weeks or whatever, until, I feel like maybe I feel energetic today and I can take another look at the game. And often what happens, as Adam said, I go back to the game, look at it again, and now I have a different idea. Now I have an idea that gets me unstuck. And that means, what I had to do was stop. I mean, it was a requirement for me to stop working on the game so I could actually get the right idea. It was a requirement. It was not that just, it was a problem that needed time. It's like the game required time away from the problem. Like if I kept trying to power through it, I may even have gotten more frustrated, not get anywhere, and then quit the game. Right.
Yeah.
So
and now it's gone, and that was a game worth making, and now it's not going to get made because you're so mad at it.
Exactly.
And also, and the work when you're in that position and you're kind of like flailing at the design, your work isn't often. I find that my work is not directed anymore. It's just like random, and now I'm just hoping that I guessed something that I would like, and now I'm definitely not having fun anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So not only am I not having fun in the moment, but exactly like you said, there's a risk that this game is fine. You're just sleepy.
Right.
And that's all that's happened.
Right.
So yeah, like put it down, watch a movie. And
so I guess what you're saying is that sometimes if you get stuck, sometimes it's better to keep the game time, which by the way is one thing that we cannot do with our commercial projects. We can't afford to do that. I mean, I tried with Storyteller, I did a couple of times because we were really stuck. But if Storyteller was not a commercial project and people didn't depend on it, I would have stopped working on it for years and then go back to it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a big problem. Storyteller was was a hard design. It needed time for my brain to settle on what I was trying to do. Right.
Yeah.
So for a self, a small project for ourselves, who cares? We just take the time.
Right.
We just take the time. It's just a week. It is 2 weeks. You're never going to touch the game again. That's fine. All is fine.
Yeah.
But if you're getting frustrated making a thing that you want to make, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think like, I'm excited I love when people discover that it's okay it's better to have those feelings and acknowledge those feelings and act on them than to pretend that you're stuck or you're not good enough to do this kind of something and just go like, it's not working today. If I force it, I'm not going to have fun and I might make it worse. And if I set it down and don't pick it up again, that's also a sign. Because like the number of things that you could be doing, you could be preventing yourself from starting the next thing, which actually is super easy and fun to do. You could be like missing out. This thing was almost good and you forced it and now it's kind of busted and you can't save it anymore. it sounds, I don't know how to talk about this in a way that doesn't sound extremely quartz crystal tarot card kombucha core, but I like genuinely, like if the odds, like at the point in the project where you stop having fun, to me that seems like a part in the project where the player is going to stop having fun. And now the enterprise of making something funny or surprising or sweet or revealing in some way for a stranger is pointless, because I don't feel like I'm going to be able to do that for them. And to me, that's different from choring and some slogs where you're like, I know that the outcome is good because we've already tested that. We just have to support it. We have to lay this foundation. We have to do this scaffolding. We have to do this thing that, like, that is, you can be doing chores and not be frustrated, but there's like a very specific kind of design feeling, I think, about being frustrated, about feeling like the design isn't going how you were wanting it to go, or you're not sure what you should be introducing in order to get it back on track. That feeling and any frustration or sense of procrastination that you have about that, I still think you just go, I'm not working on it today. And that's kind of almost the only thing to do. And just like come back to it when it matters again. And that way, like, because I think the goal is, again, hopefully often is not you release every idea you have in exactly the condition that you thought it might come out. Like the goal, hopefully, is just you're having fun making stuff. And sometimes, and depending on your process, even often, that can mean the thing does eventually get done and gets released. Like you have a way of going through the woods that works good for you. But that's less important than, like, you're enjoying this part of the project. That means you're learning stuff. That means your problem solution ordering is good. It means you're willing to, when you do run into a chore that needs doing, it's worth doing because the game is fun or you're having fun working on it. Like all of that stuff, just especially for something that you are, making on the side or that you're making to try to express an idea, like I think it's tricky to navigate on a big project, but on a little project, I'm so 100% at the point of, like, I've been not having fun for 5 minutes. This project can go to hell. New project, right? Like, because I don't know that there are that many downsides to it ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I guess one thing that I would say, that if I had practical advice for it, is that do not start polishing a small project that is not working yet. Do not polish it, because it starts creating debt for you in the future, that you sunk all this effort into an idea that is not working out, and it's just going to make you miserable. So I guess the practical advice is just do not polish stuff that is not working yet. Just leave it as it is. Go away and do something else. Yeah. Do not polish it.
Yeah.
Do not refactor the code. Do not polish it. Do not do anything to it until it proves its worth.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Makes it easier to walk away from, for sure.
Yes.
I think that's honestly really good advice for any creative activity. So I hope folks in the chat got as much out of it as I did. Thank you all again so much for hanging out, whether you're in the chat or up on the stream with me. It's been a really fun conversation. Daniel, you are welcome back anytime you'd like to come hang out on the Finji show.
All right. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you both so much.
All right. Thank you guys for having me here. Thank you
for
inviting me. Thank you, Oscar, for setting this up.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. This is almost my favorite thing in the world to talk about, as evidenced by our very long runtime here. And Daniel, thank you for taking a bunch of time out of your day to come and talk about this with us as well. It was awesome, and I got to ask all the Dragon Sweeper questions I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. All right, thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me here. It was good to see you. All right,
Yeah, you
guys.
too.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.